Ruslan.
On this episode of When Keeping It Hyper Left Goes Radically Wrong, we're going to be talking about the Netflix walkout happening today, happening in real time all over Twitter. I'm watching this and I am blown away. I'm going to call them ABC activists, came together with proposals, and they are tearing people's "We Like Dave" signs down and breaking them. That's kind of violent. And they are protesting Netflix because of the Dave Chappelle special. And then there's counter-protests with signs that say Dave is funny, jokes are funny, hilarious. They also came out with a list of demands, everything from they have to hire trans executives to everybody who's a part of the ABC activists must get a raise. It's mandatory. I wanted to play Joe Rogan reacting to the Dave Chappelle backlash because I think it's very insightful. And then I'm going to do something I've never done on this channel and it's going to blow your mind. So you gotta watch till the end. I am going to give you all the ways that fundamentalists and ABC activists are the same. Okay, so you gotta watch this till the very end. Before I get into this, I do not advocate bullying, disrespect, violence, treating people less than, otherizing anybody for any reason. I think all people, regardless on their background, regardless on their ethnicity, regardless on their choices, regardless on their presuppositions, regardless on anything, are image bearers of God, should be treated with dignity, love, and respect. Okay, so I gotta set the tone for that. Joe Rogan tends to use profanity, so you can...
Had your kids, had your wife.
Explicit, explicit,
explicit.
Here's Joe Rogan.
If you don't have an enemy, you make an enemy. And this is a real problem with people. We look for things. Like if there's some people that really hated you and they were the enemy, people that just joked around about stuff wouldn't be thought of as the enemy. It's like, and as the level of people truly hate you drops, you start looking for equilibrium in what you're upset about. And so now you're more upset about jokes. Now silence is violence. And now, you can't just be this, you have to be that.
That sounds like something I echoed almost word for word not too long ago, where I said in the fundamentalist community, there is nothing more dangerous than a bored warrior. That fundies, all my fundamentalist brothers and sisters, and when I say fundamentalist, I mean people that take every single thing under the sun and elevate it to the area of fundamental doctrine. If you don't believe or do as I say, you are not a real Christian, you're a JV Christian. So we're gonna call these folks fundies, and then we're gonna call the other end of the spectrum the ABC activists, okay? So the fundies love to fight a culture war, okay? They create problems out of people that aren't really even thinking about you. We've seen this against masks. We've seen this against CRT. We've seen this against postmodernism, right? There's always this thing to create social war, because when times are peace, people are hardwired and want to just have some sort of warrior-like spirit, right? And this is a lot of men as well. Men historically have gone out and fought these different things. And with the ABC activists, they make up enemies, okay? Hey, newsflash, Dave Chappelle's not your enemy, okay? He is not your enemy. Neither is Joe Rogan.
It becomes this like weird control level where when people start to conflate. When you start equating jokes with like real feelings. Well, they're not the same thing.
Well, I don't think that's what it is. I think they're trying to put different individuals or groups on a pedestal and kind of make them sacred. And when you have someone comes along and knocks them off that pedestal, all of a sudden you're trying to undo what I'm trying to do, which is to make this person holy. And now you are my enemy because your agenda is the opposite of mine.
They elevate people to positions of holy, and what do fundamentalists do? They too elevate people, and they say things like, do not touch the Lord's anointed. So in the fundamentalist camp, we promote people of high charisma, high charm to positions of power without the character being there. And on the ABC activist side, they elevate folks based on the intersectionality hierarchy. So the more things that you have that are deemed as oppression points or or lack of advantages, the higher you are on the intersectionality hierarchy. It's these intersections, right? Now, I'm not saying everything about intersectionality or the idea of intersectionality is wrong. They can't be a cisgendered, heterosexual white male, because if they are, well, then they don't get to speak and we can't listen to them, right? And of course, that's nonsense, because, hey, there are people of all persuasions and background that can contribute value to you, and there are white cisgendered male that have contributed value to the world, whether you want to admit that or not. So they say, do not touch the Lord's anointed or our holy ones based on the intersectionality. And the fundamentalists say it's whoever has the most charisma, whoever's the most dogmatic, whoever's the most charming. You see, you're starting to see the parallels.
These ideas that you can't make fun of are dangerous. They're not good for anybody. They're not good for the people to hold those ideas, whether it's about who you are or what you do. The idea that no fun can be had about any of this is crazy, because the idea is that then all fun is done maliciously and out of hate.
Fundies say no fun can be had. Gotta tuck your shirt in. Women can't wear pants. Okay? Can't listen to any music. You can't dance. You got instruments, those are out. Always a degree of fundamentalism where you want to go. And what do the ABC activists do? Well, they say fun is malicious, making fun of people, jokes. Even if you're making fun of yourself in the process, fun is malicious. There's a lot of parallels between our fundamentalist brothers and sisters and our ABC activists.
And they equate any jokes with hate. And this is where they're wrong. Like, I'm telling you that Dave Chappelle does not hate anyone or anything. But he's not that person.
There's this quote floating around that's been attributed Dave Chappelle, but it's actually a Rick Warren quote. And the quote is, our culture has accepted two huge lies. The first is that if you disagree with someone's lifestyle, you must fear or hate them. The second is that to love someone means you agree with everything they believe or do. Both are nonsense. You don't have to compromise convictions to be compassionate. Isn't it interesting that Rick Warren said this over 10 years ago, kinda as a shot to fundamentalists, and now this same quote is being attributed to Dave Chappelle, who didn't say it, kinda as a shot to the ABC activists.
The problem is, in listening to everybody, you're going to get a certain group of people that want people to not be able to work anymore. They want to, like, stop you. They want to pull things down. They want to change, like, what's available. You don't have to like it. Like, here's the thing about Dave Chappelle. Look, he's clearly the most popular comedian on planet Earth.
Right.
He's number one. What you want is people to not have access to him.
Right.
When you have options, you don't have to like it, but if you want Netflix to take it down and you say it's hateful, this is an incorrect way to do this. If you want to make your own special about what was wrong with Dave Chappelle's special,
or go on YouTube with your monologue like Keith Olbermann. Yeah, exactly.
Go for it.
It's not just enough to say, I don't like something. You then have to go out of your way and say, this can't be available. This is the part that's really interesting. Fundies too want censorship, do they not? How many of us forgot the 90s when fundamentalist Christians would do what? They would take CDs, primarily rap CDs, and they would take them and they would burn them and they would stage protests and they would get so angry. And they wanted certain things censored, did they not? And so now the inverse has happened. What's happened? ABC activists, they're now the tone police. They're now taking not just a protest and saying we're walking out and we're doing a walkout at Netflix. Now they're taking your Davis funny sign and they're breaking it down, as we've seen in some of the videos. He's holding a sign, we like Dave. They take his sign and they break it down, stomp the sign, then they give him the thing back and they say, you have a weapon. This reminds me of fundamentalists back in the 90s doing what? Burning CDs, telling you what you can't listen to. Here, I'm gonna dig a little bit. I just did a video on the secret lesson of Squid Games. I didn't ask what do you think about Squid Games? I said, hey, I watched it. You probably shouldn't watch it if you have a weak conscience, but hey, here are the takeaways from Squid Games. You know what we got in the comments section? We got a bunch of folks who said why Christians shouldn't watch Squid Games. I didn't ask you. Right? So there's this still desire to do the same thing. There's a desire to control and there's a desire to censor. It's the same in time. I'm going to get to why that is, right? But this idea of censorship is both by the fundies and by the ABC activists. The fundies view themselves as what? Born again. Jesus says, ye must be born again, right? What do ABC activists, or specifically the folks from the TRANS community say, okay? They say it's dead names. If you mention them by their birth name, you're using a dead name and you can get in trouble for that. And on Twitter, they've actually made it a thing where they can ban you. Isn't that kind of the same thing? We believe we're born again. They believe they have dead names. We believe we're new in Christ. They believe they die to their old identity and become new. And it all comes down to this: the control, the tone policing, the culture wars, the censorship. It all comes down to this ideological slant, which is dogma on both sides. It's dogma on both sides. It's not, hey man, I have my views about things and you have your views about things, and you know what? We're not gonna agree, but for the sake of just dignity and respect, let's just agree to disagree, right? Because I know folks from the ABC activist side and I know folks from the fundy side. Let's just leave each other alone. No! You can't leave each other alone, because I'm right and you're wrong and I'm right about everything. And if you don't let me censor you, and you don't listen to what I say, and you don't watch the shows I tell you to watch, and you don't protest what I tell you to protest, right? Speech, all these things, it's about dogma. It's about people have taken a binary position and it turns into an us versus them mentality. And it's the same thing, fam. It's the same thing. It's just religion repackaged. It has its own fundamentalist approach to things. It has its own hypocrisy and inconsistency. It's across the board, right? And so then you stop treating people with dignity and say, we may disagree on this, but I still have dignity and respect for you. And you start treating them as other. Right? You start treating them as other. And so unfortunately, both fundies and ABC activists have completely gone off the rails. And right now we're just seeing this. And by the way, here's my theory. My theory is, I think the fundies influenced the ABC activists. I think the ABC activists learned cancel culture from the 90s and the 80s of the fundies, from the Jerry Falwells. From that whole mentality. We're gonna censor, we're gonna burn CDs of a genre we don't like, of content we don't like. We're gonna say you can't have fun. We're gonna tell you how you gotta vote. We're gonna say if you don't vote this way, well then you're terrible and you're malicious and you hate us, right? And you don't really understand. And we're gonna censor you, right? And we're gonna drive our dogma on you. Now, obviously, there's some dogmas that are useful. Like what? Like humans are created in the image of God and they need to be treated with dignity. Everybody should agree on that, regardless on how you view the world. That is truth. That is absolutely true. That is a dogma we believe in, right? But all these other particulars, dead names, you have to use these pronouns. If you don't say this, you hate me. Silence is violence. You're just making a joke of something and making light of me is hating me, and it's going to cause these different things, right? It's across the board. And if we realize that, well, then maybe we can have some reasonable conversation and say, hey, maybe we should just leave people alone. You know what? We're going to disagree on some things. There's a lot of you guys that watch this channel that disagree with me on some things. That's okay. But when you start saying no, you aren't allowed to disagree, because it's not that your position is wrong. It's that when you disagree, you are wrong. And that's the beautiful part about Jesus, is Jesus says, no, it's not about doing whatever you want and living lawless. And it's also not about it being a stickler like the Pharisees. It's about relationship with me and being connected to your Creator. And I get to deal with the sin. And I'm going to give you the Holy Spirit so you can make decisions on what you should and shouldn't watch. Right? That's the beautiful part about the gospel. Is he's saying, hey, you know what? You guys aren't going to get it right on this side of eternity because you're a sinner, you're flawed, right? And instead of trying to earn your way, by the way, both sides try to earn their way, they're not, right? One side is saying, hey, you got to do good, you got to be a good moral person. The other side is saying, well, you got to do the work. You got to do the work and become more and more woke, or more enlightened, or more tolerant, or whatever it is, right? And it's not just enough to just be tolerant. Now you got to be a voice and an ally. What if I don't agree with that? Well, no, now you're right. It's the same thing. It's the same self-righteous dogma. Let me earn my righteousness and earn my status to be good, instead of Jesus coming and saying, no, you are good. I did all the things. And now I'm going to redeem you and place you in a position where you can change your life. You could be one with me in heaven in the afterlife, and you can help bring a piece of heaven to earth while you're here on this side of eternity. Those are my thoughts on this thing. Let me know what y'all think.
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Hey, thank you so much for making it till the end of this video. Remember to hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. I wanted to tell you about a free upcoming course I am putting together at mastermyhabits.com. When you sign up right now, you'll be the first to be notified about the course. And in the meantime, you'll immediately get access to a playlist going over my journey on how I went from addiction to freedom forming habits. So make sure to hit that link in the description. I'll see you on the next video.